of positivity and inspiration. Implementation of the framework will take a whole of government and a whole of society approach, and implementation will need to happen immediately after its adoption. We know what is needed: strong policies, finance, engagement from all sectors of society, and actions at all levels. Biodiversity loss is a complex and multifaceted issue that cannot be defined by a single indicator or measure. Actions need to be commensurate with the challenge of tackling these interconnected crises. And I understand that negotiations to reach global consensus on biodiversity, with all that it encompasses, may seem like a daunting task. But I can assure you that all aspects of our lives will reap the benefits from it. And I'm encouraged by what I've heard today. It is a great pleasure to see such strong commitment from leaders around the world. And I look forward to seeing the leadership and commitment from today and from this COP27 climate continue to COP15 of CBD in December. Time for action is now. Well, and if I can be frank, the time was actually yesterday. The window is rapidly closing if we want to avoid yet another catastrophe. We simply cannot miss this opportunity. We cannot afford inaction any longer. And I know you are all with me on this knowledge. And after 2 years of unfortunate delays, I look forward to welcoming you all to Montreal and take action to change the world where we are today. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for underlining the urgency of the challenge that we all have. For this call for action, to turn words into action, and to put those commitments that have been made into results in Montreal that can then lead to results on the ground. And we know that some of the most effective protectors of biodiversity on the ground are the indigenous peoples and local communities. I think we've heard this a number of times today, and this is becoming more and more recognized, and was one of the key conclusions also of the IPBES report, that if we look at where biodiversity is most well protected, it's in the territories of indigenous peoples and local communities. I'd like to think that the Convention on Biological Diversity was a little ahead of others, perhaps, in recognizing this by including in the text of the convention itself the famous Article 8J, recognizing the important role of indigenous peoples and local communities, recognizing the important role of traditional knowledge. And over the past 30 years, indigenous peoples and their representatives have been working very closely under the framework of the convention through the International Indigenous Forum on Biodiversity and their member organizations. And it's one of those leaders is Lucy Melenki, the Executive Director of the Indigenous Information Network. Now we're going to hear from Lucy. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, and good afternoon, everyone. Excellencies, President of the COP15, Minister from Canada, thank you very much, and the Executive Secretary, Manuela, and the co-chairs of the post-2020 global framework. And of course, the distinguished delegates who are here listening to us, thank you for coming. Yes, indeed, David. Indigenous people have really been working so hard. We've been working to make sure that at least we be able to follow step by step on what is happening in our process in terms of looking at issues of biodiversity. We are also happy, and that's why we are here in, first of all, Sharm El Sheikh means a lot to us because that's where the last COP was. And the secondly is to come and have these synergies between the climate change and CBD. And we started it up in Cop26 because we felt that we must really look at these Rio conferences together and be able to discuss different issues to ensure that we bring those synergies and the cooperation between all of them. One of the most important things is that we have been looking at the post-2020 global biodiversity framework step by step, and we really want to thank the co-chairs for including us and being able to consult with us and working with the governments to make sure that at least we can be able to have our issues on the table and to make sure that Indigenous peoples, women and youth issues are also included. It's very important because we are looking at nature. For us Indigenous people, nature is us and nature itself is with us, and we must make sure that we protect it and conserve it for the future generation. I think the Executive Secretary has been discussing and making sure to all the time remind us our role as Indigenous people, why it's very vital in terms of looking at conservation and looking at our work in contribution to the global post-20 global framework. We have just started the journey, according to me, because we have the implementation process that's coming up, and it's going to be a real task ahead and also challenges. In fact, looking at it and seeing, do we have funding to continue with the implementation? And as you said, the Executive Secretary, that the work begins immediately. For us Indigenous people, we are set. We are saying that we must really ask our governments, ask the parties to the convention to make sure that this global biodiversity framework is made a reality. We have it, and we immediately start with the implementation, because this is a tool that is going to guide all of us, not only Indigenous people, but also the governments and all the stakeholders that are going to work. Before this particular panel, we had our colleague Jennifer Corpus, who brought up and highlighted some of the key issues of Indigenous people and what our positions are and what we have been discussing. And this is very crucial for us because we have maintained and looking at ourselves as a close family, working in solidarity together, following step by step, looking at all the targets and looking at the goals of the framework and seeing where do we move from here, where do we go. And we have come here to share also with our colleagues from the climate family so that we can be able to make sure that they can also help us in terms of looking at what the governments are going to really recommend and do that. We believe in the partnership, and we really hope that this partnership can continue being implemented and look at our work ahead to make sure there is no one that is going to be left behind in terms of looking at different key players. We also want to really say that in the issue of funding, because in this COP there have been a lot of discussion on issues of funding, where is the funding and where is it going and where is it going to come from. I think for Indigenous people, we are really urging partners, donors, and governments to really make sure that we have funding for Indigenous people to be able to take action at the ground level. We want to appreciate Canada for hosting us. We have already been working with our Indigenous brothers and sisters from Canada, and we see ourselves moving forward as a clear way to be able to achieve these particular goals and continue working with the Secretariat and with the parties to our convention at the ground level. And we also look forward for the parties to really recognize our vital role to make sure that at least we can be able to put our way forward. We have worked on many targets. I know there are still some issues, but we know that we are also going to make it up in terms of our discussion in Montreal. So I think, David, this is some of the messages that I wanted to really put up and say that it's very important to have the governments, really, the parties to the convention, approving the global biodiversity framework, take up the issues, and where there are challenges, it's important to make sure that at least those can be discussed early enough before the work. And for the co-chairs, I don't think the work is over yet. When even during implementation, we'll still be getting back to you because we need to have guidance in terms of looking some of the critical issues that may occur as we continue to work on to the success of this global biodiversity framework. And by the time it's 2030, at least we know that we are going somewhere and indigenous people will have played their part and also have played their role in terms of making the implementation process a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you for all that you do and for the full engagement of your community and the indigenous peoples and local communities in the ongoing negotiations. And now I'm going to turn to the co-chairs of those negotiations. They've been working for the past 4 years, and now as we approach COP15, just before COP15, we'll have on the 2nd to the 5th of December, so very short time, the final meeting of the working group on the post-2020 framework. So I'd like to invite Francis and Basile to give us some thoughts, guidance, perhaps instructions on what needs to be done between now and the 2nd of December and what we can achieve in those 3 days ahead of COP15 in Montreal. Over to you.
Thank you, David. Let me take you back to where we came from, which is here. For a few years, 4 years ago, we started the discussion, established this process. We've been working through negotiation, and like everybody else, we were stopped and had to work online for some time and resumed face-to-face negotiation in Geneva. There was important work done both in Geneva and in Nairobi. Good discussion that had to take place. Unfortunately, there was not enough time. And the text out of Nairobi was nowhere in good shape to be presented to ministers. The working group asked us to assemble a 5th meeting. As David mentioned, this will take place very soon. They also asked us to do a technical review of the document. That took place in September. Was done by a small group, regionally balanced, and we've invited, as Lucy mentioned, briefing by indigenous people and local communities and other experts. This group produced a document that at the core is a lot simpler to deal with, identify the issue. It is also half of the bracket and about 3/4 of the length of the old one. This is a document that we'll be offering to the working group, and it will be up to the working group to decide if they want to use it. Our hope and our desire is that this document be used. In fact, if it's not used, I don't know how we're going to get to an agreement. We're well positioned for this next round of negotiation. There's been a lot of good discussion. There's been a lot of preparation. This morning we published a scenario note if you want to get into the gory detail of what's going to be done when and how, and you'll have all of it there. Francis and I have been very much encouraged by what we heard this week here. I've seen more openness to dialogue, more engagement at high level, more commitment to solution that we've seen before. We're going to need all that and more. There will be a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in the negotiation across the 3 days, but also in the COP. Francis and I will be there with you. We want to see that deal. We've been living and dreaming about this for many, many nights, months, and years. So we count on your engagement. We count on your support. We count on your openness. And a little bit earlier, Tara was talking about the world looking to Montreal. I think the world will be looking to Montreal, but the world will be looking to the delegates and the negotiators. The world wants a deal. The world cannot wait. We have to do a deal, and we will do a deal. Francis.
Thank you, Co-Chair Basil. I think almost you've said it all, but I just want to maybe say a few, 2-3 words in addition to what you've said. 4 years have gone. If you look at 4 years, the last time I was here, 2018, I came back and tried to go to the hotel I stayed in last. I saw a lot of change. I nearly got lost, meaning time has really gone. So if we are blessed with the 4 years for which we have engaged so much, we had 5 regional consultations. We've had 4 meetings of the open-ended working group. We have had 1 meeting of the informal group you have had. Really, the 4 years, when you look at it, has enabled us to do a lot of consultation. So the remaining few days should be for us to reach an agreement, not to create conditions as if we've started this thing yesterday. 4 years is a lot of time. There is no more time to move back and forth. Time has come, as Co-Chair has said, that this framework has to be adopted. But in terms of climate biodiversity linkage, CBD has always been on the forefront to make sure that when it is discussing its meeting at COP, when it is developing a framework, that issues of climate change are not left out. And therefore, if you look at target 8 of the current framework, you're going to see issues. That target is specifically on climate change. So what is therefore needed is that as we do negotiations in climate change, let's integrate biodiversity. As we do negotiations in biodiversity, let's integrate climate change. Because where there is biodiversity loss, climate change impact is high. Where there is a high impact of climate change, biodiversity loss is high. Those two, as you've heard, we cannot stop them from happening together. We have no powers to do that. They will always be happening. So that is what science, that is what nature is telling us. And therefore, we see that discussions on biodiversity has now begun taking roots in climate change, which is encouraging, and we'd like to see that, even get better as we move forward. So I would like to end by saying that for us as co-chairs, my co-chair has already said it, we are very optimistic that the framework will be adopted. Let's all come together. Let's be united. Let's be united when we get to Montreal, whether in the open-ended working group or at COP. Unity is going to play a very big role. Flexibility is going to play a very big role. And that is what happens at COP if you are going to succeed. People should accept that you may not see text as the way you want it written, but your interest could still be covered. And then you let the group move on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Francis. Thank you, Basil. Thank you for that call for unity. We'll be counting on you, and as you said, you'll also be counting on us, on everyone here, to ensure that we can get a near, almost complete, nearly perfect post-2020 framework delivered to the COP on December the 7th. So then, of course, it has to be implemented. And we know that this, as we say often, will need a whole of government approach, a whole of society approach. It will need everyone. Governments, national, subnational, local, indigenous peoples and local communities, civil society, businesses, youth, women's organizations. It will need everyone. Here, 4 years ago in Sharm El Sheikh, Minister Yasmin Fouad and Minister Huang Runchu launched what is now the Sharm to Kunming to Montreal action agenda for nature and people, to bring together all of these actors to make their commitments and their actions towards the goals of the convention, towards the implementation of the eventual post-2020 framework. And I'd like to give the last word to Manuel Pulgar, the champion for the Sharm El Sheikh to Kunming to Montreal Action Agenda, the former leader of the Lima to Paris Action Agenda after he presided over COP20, to give us an update on what has been achieved through the Action Agenda and where we go from here. Manuel.
Thank you, David, and thank you very much for this opportunity. As it has just been mentioned by David, it's correct. It was here in this town, Sharm El Sheikh, when in 2018, and based in the leadership of, at that time, COP14 presidency, Egypt, and incoming presidency, China, that the Sharm El Sheikh to Kunming Action Agenda was launched. And I think that that was a fantastic step forward. That showed the leadership of two countries and all parties that finally adopted this agenda to include all the actors as a way to move and to create momentum to adopt in the incoming COP15 the global biodiversity framework. Based on that, and based on all the effort of the CBD Secretariat, the Sharm El Sheikh to Kunming Action Agenda has developed a portal that has already registered more than 524 strong commitment by non-state actors. Probably it is still modest, but it is a good step forward to show that things are happening. And in that sense, we are in a time in which we are completely sure that with the leadership of China as COP15 presidency, and also with Canada as a country who is going to host the COP15, we will get a strong and ambitious post-2020 global biodiversity framework. So just after that, when we are in the last day of the COP15 in Montreal, we have to start to implement. And the only way to implement it is by convening whole of society. So what do we need? It is to continue to strengthen the role of the non-state actors as a way to support implementation of the global biodiversity framework. You can see how active, how powerful, how dynamic it is the participation of the non-state actors that are helping the world to achieve our climate objective. Let's do the same with the biodiversity agenda. Let's do the same with the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Let's implement it in the global arena, but also domestically by convening non-state actors into the table. But also, unfortunately, we are not starting from scratch. It is amazing that now in COP27, we are celebrating a biodiversity day. It is amazing how many good announcements based on nature it has been released in this COP. It is amazing how many coalitions of non-state actors to continue working toward addressing nature loss have been conformed, convened, gathered. So we are not starting from scratch. So that means that we can showcase the non-state actors' agenda for nature based in the Sharm El Sheikh to Kunming to Montreal Action Agenda can showcase. But also, to strengthen that action agenda, it will honor this key principle of China, the ecological civilization objective, but also the whole of society approach that the CBD and the Global Biodiversity Framework it is looking to achieve. And finally, we do think that the strengthening of the action agenda for nature will help us to collaborate. This Cop27 climate COP, it has shown the importance of working together, the importance of promoting convergence, the importance of developing tools to continue addressing the intertwined crisis in an effective way. So I am sure that it will be by strengthening the action agenda for nature, the Sharm El Sheikh to Kunming to Montreal action agenda, that we will achieve that objective. And we will show to the world that to address the climate challenges and the biodiversity challenges are feasible, and we will continue moving the world into a sustainable time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Manuel, and thank you for your tireless efforts for promoting action on climate, on biodiversity, and, as you say, working together to promote both objectives. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings this panel to a close. I really would like to express my thanks to all of the panel members for your statements, even more for your hard work, which will continue over the next few days and weeks until we get that agreement, that post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework in Montreal. Thank you. And now, before